Adisa ventured into the evil forest, guided by whispers of a powerful witch who lived deep within its heart. The forest was a place of darkness and legend, and few who entered ever returned. But Adisa was determined. He found the witch in a clearing, her form shrouded in shadows, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "I have heard of your power," Adisa said, his voice filled with both awe and greed. "I wish to make a pact with you." The witch studied him, her expression unreadable. "And what would you offer in return for my power?" Adisa hesitated. "Name your price." The witch's lips curled into a sly smile. "Your soul." "Very well," Adisa responded. "You can have my soul, but in exchange, I want the power to subdue my enemies. Let no man living, no kingdom on earth be able to overpower my reign." "Very well," the witch replied. "I will grant you the power to transform into a beast, a creature of unmatched strength and ferocity. With this power, you will defeat your enemies and make your kingdom the greatest in the land. But there is a condition." Adisa leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "What condition?" "You must never transform during the full moon," the witch said, her voice low and ominous. "If you do, the transformation will be permanent, and you will be lost to the beast forever, and your generations will serve me." In the land of Mbuji, nestled between towering mountains and dense forests, the kingdom thrived under the rule of King Jabari. He was a wise and just ruler, beloved by his people. But behind the grandeur of the palace walls lay a secret known only to his first wife, Queen Mariam. Every full moon, the king's body would twist and contort, his humanity slipping away as he transformed into a fearsome beast. It was a curse that had plagued his bloodline for generations, and Mariam had sworn to protect him and the kingdom from the truth. For years, their routine was flawless. On the night of the full moon, Mariam would lead the king to the hidden chamber beneath the palace, a place fortified with iron bars and enchanted locks. There, he would endure the transformation in solitude, his roars muffled by the thick stone walls. By dawn, the beast would retreat, and the king would emerge, weary but human once more. Mariam would be there, waiting with a warm smile and a cup of soothing tea, her unwavering loyalty, a balm to his troubled soul. But one fateful full moon, the unthinkable happened. The kingdom was preparing for the annual Festival of Lights, a celebration of unity and prosperity. The streets were adorned with lanterns, and the air buzzed with excitement. Unbeknownst to the people, the full moon coincided with the festival's final night. Mariam, ever vigilant, had already begun her preparations to secure the king. However, this time, the king hesitated. "Mariam," he said, his voice heavy with guilt, "I grow weary of this curse. Perhaps it is time I face it openly. The people deserve to know the truth." Mariam's heart sank. "Jabari, you know what will happen if they find out. Fear will spread, and the kingdom will turn against you. We must continue as we have." The Festival of Lights was in full swing. The streets of Mbuji were alive with music, laughter, and the warm glow of lanterns. Villagers danced in the square, children chased each other with sparklers, and the air was thick with the scent of roasted meats and sweet pastries. Unbeknownst to the revelers, the full moon hung high in the sky, casting an eerie silver light over the kingdom. Beneath the palace, Queen Mariam was preparing for the night's grim ritual. She stood in the hidden chamber, a dimly lit room fortified with iron bars and enchanted locks. The walls were lined with ancient runes, their faint glow the only source of light. King Jabari sat on a stone bench, his face pale and drawn. The transformation was beginning. "Jabari," Mariam said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It's time." He nodded, his jaw clenched. "Every time it feels like I'm losing a part of myself. What if one day I can't come back?" Mariam knelt before him, her eyes fierce with determination. "You will always come back. I won't let you lose yourself, not to this curse, not to the beast. You are my king, and I will fight for you no matter what." Jabari managed a weak smile. "You are my strength, Mariam. Without you, I would have succumbed to this darkness long ago." As the first pangs of the transformation racked his body, Mariam helped him into the center of the chamber. She secured the iron door, ensuring the enchanted locks were in place. The runes on the walls flared brighter, their magic reinforcing the bars. She stepped back, her heart heavy, as Jabari's form began to twist and contort. Meanwhile, a group of rebels had infiltrated the palace. Led by Cato, a cunning and ambitious man who sought to overthrow the king, they had spent weeks planning this night. They believed the hidden chamber held treasures or weapons that would give them the upper hand. Under the cover of the festival's noise, they slipped into the palace's lower levels. "This way," Cato whispered, leading his men through the dark corridors. They reached the heavy iron door of the hidden chamber, its surface etched with strange symbols. This must be it. Break it open. The rebels worked quickly, using tools and brute force to weaken the door. The enchanted locks held for a time, but the rebels' persistence began to take its toll. The runes on the walls flickered and dimmed as the magic faltered. Inside the chamber, the beast now fully transformed paced restlessly. Its massive form was a terrifying blend of man and monster, with sharp claws, glowing eyes, and a guttural growl that reverberated through the stone walls. It stopped abruptly, its head snapping toward the door as the sound of metal scraping against metal reached its ears. The door groaned under the rebels' assault. Finally, with a loud crash, it gave way. The rebels burst into the chamber, their eyes wide with anticipation. But what they found was not treasure or weapons, it was a nightmare. The beast roared, a sound so deafening it shook the very foundations of the palace. The rebels froze in terror, their tools slipping from their hands. Cato, ever the opportunist, was the first to react. "Run!" he shouted, turning on his heel, but it was too late. The beast lunged, its claws slicing through the air. One rebel fell instantly, his scream cut short. Another tried to fight back, swinging a dagger, but the beast swatted him aside like a rag doll. Cato and the remaining rebels fled down the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the narrow passage. The beast gave chase, its primal instincts driving it forward. It tore through the palace, leaving destruction in its wake. The rebels' cries of terror were drowned out by the beast's roars as it hunted them down one by one. By the time it reached the palace gates, the rebels were no more. The beast burst into the festival square, its massive form silhouetted against the moonlight. The villagers froze, their joyous celebrations turning to screams of terror. The beast roared again, its eyes wild with rage and confusion. It lashed out, overturning stalls and sending villagers fleeing in every direction. Mariam, who had been searching for the beast, arrived in the square just as the chaos reached its peak. "Jabari!" she cried, her voice cutting through the noise. "Stop this! Remember who you are!" For a moment, the beast hesitated, its gaze locking onto hers. But the bloodlust was too strong. It turned away, retreating into the shadows as the villagers cowered in fear. The beast disappeared into the evil forest, a place shrouded in darkness and legend. No one dared to follow. The kingdom of Mbuji was left in shock. The Festival of Lights, once a symbol of unity, had become a night of horror. The villagers whispered of the cursed king, their fear and anger growing with each retelling of the events. Mariam stood in the empty square, her heart heavy with grief. The palace was eerily silent in the days following the tragedy. The Festival of Lights, once a joyous occasion, had become a somber reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. The villagers whispered among themselves, their fear and confusion palpable. The king was gone, the beast had vanished into the evil forest, and the kingdom was left in disarray. Queen Mariam, once a pillar of strength, now sat alone in the royal chambers. Her eyes were red from crying, and her hands trembled as she clutched a small embroidered handkerchief, a gift from Jabari on their wedding day. The weight of her grief was unbearable. She had lost not only her king, but also the man she loved, the man who had trusted her with his darkest secret. "Jabari," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Where are you? What has become of you?" Tears streamed down her face as she replayed the events of that fateful night in her mind. The beast's roar, the villagers' screams, the sight of Jabari disappearing into the shadows of the evil forest, it was a nightmare she couldn't escape. She had failed to protect him, and now he was lost to the darkness. As the days passed, the village elders grew increasingly concerned. The kingdom was without a king, and the people were restless. Rumors spread like wildfire, each one more outlandish than the last. Some claimed the beast was a demon sent to punish the kingdom, while others believed it was a sign of the god's wrath. Finally, the elders called for a meeting. They gathered in the great hall, a solemn assembly of the kingdom's wisest and most respected leaders. The hall was filled with tension as the elders took their seats, their faces grave. "Send for Queen Mariam." The eldest of them, a man named Elder Okoye, commanded. "She is the only one who can shed light on what has happened." When Mariam entered the great hall, the room fell silent. She looked pale and weary, her usual regal bearing replaced by a profound sadness. The elders rose as a sign of respect, but their eyes were filled with questions. "Queen Mariam," Elder Okoye began, his voice gentle but firm, "we are deeply sorry for your loss, but the kingdom is in turmoil, and we must understand what has transpired. What was that creature? And where is King Jabari?" Mariam took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She knew the time had come to reveal the truth, a truth she had guarded for so long. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. "Many years ago," Mariam began, "King Jabari confided in me a secret that has haunted his family for generations. He was cursed to transform into a beast every full moon. It was a burden he bore in silence, for fear of what would happen if the people ever found out." The elders exchanged shocked glances, but Mariam pressed on. "For years, we managed the curse together. On the night of the full moon, I would lock him in a hidden chamber beneath the palace to protect him and to protect all of you. He never wanted anyone to suffer because of his affliction." Her voice broke as she continued. "But on the night of the festival, something went wrong. Rebels broke into the chamber, unaware of the danger. They weakened the locks, and the beast broke free. It killed the rebels, and then it rampaged through the village. I tried to stop it, to reach Jabari, but it was too late. The beast fled into the evil forest, and I couldn't save him." Tears streamed down her face as she finished her story. The great hall was silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. The elders looked at her with a mixture of pity and disbelief. Elder Okoye was the first to speak. "Queen Mariam," he said, his voice filled with compassion, "you have carried this burden alone for too long. We cannot imagine the pain you have endured, nor the strength it has taken to protect the kingdom in this way." Another elder, a woman named Elder Neka, leaned forward. "But the question remains, what do we do now? The kingdom is without a king, and the people are afraid. We must decide how to move forward." Mariam wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. "I will not abandon Jabari," she said firmly. "I will go into the evil forest and bring him back. I do not know if the curse can be broken, but I will not rest until I have tried." The elders murmured among themselves, their expressions thoughtful. Finally, Elder Okoye nodded. "You have our support, Queen Mariam, but know this, the evil forest is a place of great danger. If you are to succeed, you will need more than courage. You will need the blessings of the ancestors and the strength of the kingdom behind you." Mariam bowed her head. "Thank you," she said. "I will do whatever it takes to save my king and restore peace to Muji." As the meeting concluded, the elders spread the truth to the people of Mbuji. Though fear and uncertainty still lingered, the villagers began to see their queen in a new light. Her bravery and unwavering love for Jabari inspired them, and many offered their support for her quest. Mariam knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, but she also knew she was not alone. The kingdom stood with her, united in their hope for a brighter future. The news of Queen Mariam's quest spread quickly through the kingdom. Though fear of the evil forest still lingered, the people of Mbuji were inspired by their queen's courage. Many offered their help, bringing supplies, weapons, and words of encouragement to the palace. Mariam spent the days leading up to the journey preparing meticulously. She gathered provisions, dried meats, fruits, and herbs, as well as tools that might aid her in the forest. A sturdy rope, a sharp machete, and a flask of sacred water blessed by the village priestess. These items, she hoped, would help her track him down. The elders, true to their word, called upon the village's strongest warriors to accompany Mariam. 2 were chosen: Ikon, a seasoned hunter known for his unmatched skill with a bow, and Zola, a fierce warrior woman who had defended the kingdom against countless threats. Both were loyal to the crown and respected throughout Mbuji. Ikon was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a quiet demeanor. His piercing eyes missed nothing, and his skill with a bow was legendary. He had spent much of his life tracking game in the forests surrounding Mbuji, and his knowledge of the land would be invaluable. Zola, on the other hand, was a force of nature. Her muscular frame and confident stride commanded respect, and her skill with a spear was unmatched. She had a fiery spirit and a deep sense of justice, making her a natural protector of the kingdom. The 2 warriors stood before Mariam in the palace courtyard, their expressions serious but determined. Ikon carried his bow and a quiver of arrows, while Zola held her spear and a shield adorned with the symbol of Mbuji. "Queen Mariam," Ikon said, bowing his head, "we are honored to accompany you on this quest. Whatever lies in the evil forest, we will face it together." Zola stepped forward, her voice firm. "The kingdom needs its king, and we will not rest until he is found. You have our loyalty and our strength." Mariam nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, both of you. This journey will not be easy, but with your help I believe we can succeed." On the eve of their departure, the village priestess, Amina, performed a ritual to bless the travelers. The entire village gathered in the square, their faces lit by the warm glow of torches. Amina, an elderly woman with wise eyes and a gentle demeanor, stood at the center of the circle, holding a staff adorned with feathers and beads. "Queen Mariam, Ekon, and Zola," Amina began, her voice carrying across the square. "You embark on a journey into darkness, but you carry the light of hope with you. May the ancestors guide your steps and protect you from harm." She anointed each of them with sacred oil, drawing symbols of protection on their foreheads. The evil forest is a place of great danger, but also of great power. Trust in each other, and trust in the strength of your hearts. The villagers chanted prayers, their voices rising in unison. Mariam felt a surge of determination as she looked out at the faces of her people. They were counting on her, and she would not let them down. At dawn, the trio set out for the evil forest. The journey to the forest's edge was quiet, each of them lost in their thoughts. As they approached the towering trees, the air grew colder and the sunlight seemed to dim. Mariam paused at the edge of the forest, her heart pounding. She turned to Ikon and Zola. "Once we enter, there's no turning back. Are you ready?" Ikon tightened his grip on his bow. "Ready." Zola nodded, her eyes blazing with determination. "Let's bring our king home." Together, they stepped into the forest. The trees closed in around them, their twisted branches forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the silence was unnerving. It wasn't long before they encountered their first obstacle. The path ahead was blocked by a dense thicket of thorny vines, their sharp barbs glistening in the dim light. Ekon stepped forward, drawing a small knife from his belt. "Let me handle this," he said, carefully cutting through the vines. His movements were precise, and within minutes he had cleared a path. As they pressed on, Zola kept a watchful eye on their surroundings. "Stay close," she warned. "This forest is alive. It will try to deceive us." As night fell, the forest grew even darker and more foreboding. Strange noises echoed through the trees, and shadows seemed to move on their own. The trio knew they were being watched, but by what or whom they couldn't tell. Mariam clutched the wooden box containing the amulet fragment, feeling its faint pulse. "We're close," she whispered. "I can feel it." The journey was far from over, but with each step they grew closer to Jabariand, to the truth behind the curse. As the trio ventured deeper into the evil forest, the air grew heavier, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. The trees loomed taller, their gnarled branches twisting like claws. Strange whispers filled the air, and the ground beneath their feet felt unnaturally soft, as if the forest itself was alive and watching. Mariam clutched the wooden box containing the amulet fragment, its faint pulse guiding her forward. Ekon kept his bow at the ready, his sharp eyes scanning the darkness. while Zola gripped her spear, her muscles tense with anticipation. The path ahead suddenly gave way to a vast, murky swamp. The water was black and stagnant, with gnarled roots protruding like skeletal hands. A thick mist hung over the swamp, obscuring their vision. "We'll have to cross," Mariam said, her voice steady despite the unease in her chest. Ekon stepped forward, testing the ground with his foot. "The mud is deep. One wrong step and we could sink." Zola pointed to a series of half-submerged logs. "We can use those as stepping stones, but we'll need to move quickly and carefully." As they began to cross, the swamp seemed to come alive. The water bubbled and churned, and shadowy figures emerged from the mist, ghostly apparitions of people they had known, their faces twisted in anguish. "Mariam," a voice called, eerily familiar. It was Jabari, his form pale and translucent.
"Why did you let this happen? Why couldn't you save me?"
Mariam froze, her heart aching. "It's not real," she whispered to herself. "It's the forest playing tricks." Ekon and Zola were also confronted by their own ghosts. Ekon by the memory of a hunting companion he had failed to save, and Zola by the face of a sibling she had lost in battle. The apparitions taunted them, their voices filled with despair. "Stay focused," Zola shouted, her voice cutting through the mist. "Don't let them get to you." With great effort, the trio pushed through the swamp, their determination outweighing the forest's attempts to break their spirits. When they finally reached solid ground, they were exhausted but unharmed. Beyond the swamp, they encountered a grove filled with towering, thorn-covered plants. The thorns were as long as daggers, and the plants seemed to sway and shift, blocking their path. "There's no way around," Ekon said, frowning. "We'll have to cut through." Zola stepped forward, her spear in hand. "I'll lead the way. Stay close." As they entered the grove, the plants lashed out, their thorny tendrils whipping through the air. Zola swung her spear with precision, cutting through the vines, but the plants were relentless. One of the thorns grazed her arm, drawing blood. "Zola!" Mariam cried, rushing to her side. "I'm fine," Zola said through gritted teeth. "Keep moving." Ekon fired arrows into the plants, slowing their advance, while Mariam used her machete to clear a path. The grove seemed endless, and the thorns grew thicker with every step. Just as they began to lose hope, they spotted a faint light ahead, a break in the grove. "There!" Mariam shouted. "We're almost through." With one final push, they burst out of the grove, their bodies bruised and scratched but alive. The light they had seen came from a small clearing, where a single ancient tree stood. Its branches were bare, and its trunk was covered in strange, glowing symbols like keys. As they approached the tree, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The symbols on the tree's trunk flared to life, and a deep, resonant voice filled the clearing.
"Who dares to enter my domain?" the voice boomed. "You seek the cursed king, but the price for his freedom is high. Prove your worth, or you will perish."
The tree's roots began to move, rising from the ground like serpents. The trio braced themselves as the roots attacked, their movements swift and unpredictable. Ekon fired arrows, but the roots seemed to regenerate as quickly as they were cut. Zola swung her spear, her movements a blur, but the roots were relentless. Mariam, armed only with her machete, fought with all her strength, her determination unwavering. "We can't keep this up," Ekon shouted, dodging a root that nearly struck him. Mariam's eyes fell on the glowing key symbols on the tree's trunk. "The symbols!" she cried. "They're the key! We have to detach them!" Zola nodded. "Cover me!" With Ekon and Mariam drawing the root's attention, Zola charged toward the tree. She struck one of the symbols with her spear, and the tree let out a deafening roar. The roots recoiled, giving them a brief reprieve. "Do it again!" Mariam shouted. Before Zola could react, the roots swung heavily at her. Zola's body slammed into the jagged rock with a sickening thud. She crumpled to the ground, her spear slipping from her grasp. For a moment she didn't move, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, and her arm hung limply at her side. "Zola!" Mariam screamed, her voice filled with panic. She started toward her, but a root lashed out, forcing her to duck. Ekon fired an arrow into the root, severing it. "Stay back!" he shouted to Mariam. "I'll cover you." Mariam hesitated, her heart pounding. She knew they couldn't afford to lose Zola, but they also couldn't stop fighting. The tree's roots were still thrashing wildly, and the glowing symbols on its trunk pulsed with malevolent energy. Zola groaned, struggling to push herself up. I'm fine," she lied, her voice strained. "Keep going." Mariam clenched her fists, her mind racing. She couldn't leave Zola defenseless, but they were running out of time. The tree's roots were regenerating faster now, and the clearing was growing smaller as the roots closed in. Mariam's resolve. "Ekon, cover me!" Mariam shouted, her voice firm despite the fear in her chest. She grabbed Zola's spear from the ground and sprinted toward the tree, dodging roots as they whipped past her. Ekon fired arrow after arrow, his movements a blur. Each shot struck true, giving Mariam the opening she needed. She reached the tree and raised the spear, striking one of the glowing symbols with all her strength. The tree shuddered, and the roots recoiled again. "One down," Mariam shouted. "2 more to go." Zola, still on the ground, managed to pull herself into a sitting position. She winced in pain but forced herself to stay alert. "Ekon!" she called. "The roots are targeting you! Watch your back!" Ekon spun around just in time to see a root lunging at him. He leaped to the side, firing an arrow mid-air. The root was severed, but another one was already closing in. Mariam struck the second symbol, and the tree let out an ear-splitting roar. The roots thrashed violently, and the ground beneath them began to crack. Mariam stumbled, nearly losing her balance, but she held onto the spear and pressed forward. "Mariam, look out!" Zola shouted. A massive root surged toward Mariam, its thorns glistening like blades. She barely had time to react, raising the spear to block the attack. The force of the impact sent her sprawling, and the spear was knocked from her hands. Ekon fired an arrow into the root, but it wasn't enough to stop it. The root reared back, ready to strike again. Mariam scrambled to her feet, her eyes darting around for a weapon. That's when she saw it, the shard of the amulet, still clutched in her hand. Without thinking, she hurled the shard at the final symbol. It struck true, embedding itself into the tree's trunk. The symbol flared brightly, and the tree let out a final deafening roar. The roots collapsed to the ground, lifeless, and the glowing symbols faded to nothing. The clearing fell silent, save for the sound of heavy breathing. Mariam dropped to her knees, exhausted but relieved. Ekon rushed to her side, helping her to her feet. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. Mariam shook her head. "We did it." They turned to Zola, who was still sitting against the rock. Her face was pale, and her breathing was shallow, but she managed a weak smile. "Told you I was fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mariam and Ekon hurried to her side. "You're not fine," Mariam said, her voice trembling. "We need to get you out of here." Zola waved them off. "Not yet. We're close to finding my king." Mariam hesitated, torn between her concern for Zola and the need to finish their quest. Finally, she nodded. "We'll go together, but you're not fighting anymore, understood?" Zola chuckled weakly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Long before Jabari's reign, the kingdom of Mbuji was ruled by King Adisa, a man of great ambition but little compassion. His kingdom was vast, but his heart was small, and he cared little for the well-being of his people. Adisa was obsessed with power, and he sought to make Mbuji the greatest kingdom in the land. To achieve this, he was willing to make a deal with forces beyond his understanding. One night, as the full moon hung high in the sky, Adisa ventured into the evil forest, guided by whispers of a powerful witch who lived deep within its heart. The forest was a place of darkness and legend, and few who entered ever returned. But Adisa was determined. He found the witch in a clearing, her form shrouded in shadows, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "I have heard of your power," Adisa said, his voice filled with both awe and greed. "I wish to make a pact with you." The witch studied him, her expression unreadable. "And what would you offer in return for my power?" Adisa hesitated. "Name your price." The witch's lips curled into a sly smile. "Your soul." "Very well," Adisa responded. "You can have my soul, but in exchange, I want the power to subdue my enemies. Let no man living, no kingdom on earth be able to overpower my reign." "Very well," the witch replied. "I will grant you the power to transform into a beast, a creature of unmatched strength and ferocity. With this power, you will defeat your enemies and make your kingdom the greatest in the land. But there is a condition." Adisa leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "What condition?" "You must never transform during the full moon," the witch said, her voice low and ominous. "If you do, the transformation will be permanent, and you will be lost to the beast forever, and your generations will serve me." Adisa agreed without hesitation. He was so consumed by his desire for power that he failed to consider the consequences of breaking the witch's condition. With the witch's power, Adisa became unstoppable. At night, he would transform into a fearsome beast, raiding the villages of his enemies and slaughtering them with ease. No kingdom could stand against Mbuji, and Adisa's reign was marked by victory and prosperity. But his people lived in fear. Adisa's mother, Amina, was the only one who knew the truth. She had witnessed his transformation and had begged him to stop, but Adisa refused. "This power is what makes us great," he told her. "Without it, we are nothing." Queen Mother Amina, though fearful, remained loyal, but she could not shake the feeling that their prosperity was built on a fragile foundation. Years passed, and Mbuji thrived under Adisa's rule. But during one fateful festival, everything changed. The kingdom was celebrating the Festival of Lights, a time of unity and joy. Unbeknownst to Adisa, his enemies had been plotting their revenge. They stormed the kingdom under the cover of night, catching Mbuji unprepared. The battle was fierce, and the enemy forces breached the palace. The king lost his only son and queen to the fierce battle. Adisa wept uncontrollably while the enemy took control of Mbuji. Adisa, desperate to protect his kingdom in his rage, transformed into the beast despite the fear. He slaughtered his enemies with unmatched ferocity, but the cost was too high. In his rage, he lost control, attacking friend and foe alike. The kingdom was thrown into chaos, and the streets ran red with blood. When the battle was over, Mbuji was in ruins. Adisa, still in the form of the beast, realized what he had done. He let out a roar of anguish, his grief echoing through the kingdom. Unable to transform back into a human, Adisa fled into the evil forest, never to be seen again. The curse he had brought upon himself would haunt his bloodline for generations. The curse passed from Adisa to his descendants, each generation bearing the burden of his choices. The kings of Mbuji were forced to hide their affliction, transforming into beasts every full moon and locking themselves away to protect their people. But the curse was more than a physical affliction, it was a reminder of the kingdom's tragic past. Jabari, the latest in Adisa's bloodline, had hoped to break the cycle, but the curse was not so easily undone. It was tied to the witch's power and to the choices of a king who had sought power at any cost. In the murky depths of the evil forest, where light seldom ventured, King Jabari found himself once more at the mercy of the moon's call. As silver beams pierced through the thick canopy, his body contorted, bones reshaping, and a primal roar filled the cold night air. But it was not just the transformation that tortured him, it was the flood of memories that each transformation brought with it. The first flashback struck him like a thunderbolt, hurling him back to the very beginning of his curse. He was young then, barely a man, standing before his father on a similar moonlit night. His father's eyes, filled with a mix of sorrow and resignation, watched him transform for the first time. The pain was unimaginable, but so was the fear in his father's eyes. As the beast's fur sprouted across his skin, a single tear escaped his father, an unspoken apology for the legacy he had passed down. In the forest, Jabari, now half man, half beast, clutched at the dirt, his claws digging deep grooves as he relived the heartache and the heavy burden of secrecy bestowed upon him that night. Another wave of memory washed over him. This time, he was in the palace gardens years later with his young son who had chased a ball into the bushes during a full moon night. Jabari had felt the change coming and had barely managed to lock himself in the iron-barred gazebo in the center of the garden. Through the bars, he watched his son search for the ball, oblivious to the danger. The beast within had howled to be free, to claim the territory it saw as its own, but Jabari had fought it, teeth gritted, sweat mingling with tears, until his son was safely back in the arms of his unsuspecting mother. Back in the present, the beast roared in frustration, the memory igniting a fury that was hard to contain. Leaves rustled and small creatures scurried away as the echoes of his roars died down in the oppressive silence of the night. He was paying for the sins of his forefathers. Then came a memory of love intertwined with fear. It was the night Mariam first learned of his curse. They had been newly wed, and she had accidentally stumbled into his transformation chamber. The horror on her face had pierced him deeper than any physical pain could. Yet, instead of fleeing, she had approached the bars, her hands trembling but her voice steady, whispering words of love and commitment. Her presence had calmed the beast, and for the first time, Jabari had felt the beast recede willingly, a testament to the power of her love. The beast, now panting in the dark underbrush, felt a pang of longing. Mariam's words still had the power to reach him, to remind him of the man he was beneath the fur and fangs. In the forest, as the night wore on and the moon began its descent, the beast's rage subsided into a quiet despair. Each flashback left Jabari exhausted, each memory a reminder of the dual life he was forced to lead. As the dawn approached, Jabari lay on the forest floor, his body, his spirit laden with memories. He knew Mariam was coming. He could feel her determination, her unwavering spirit cutting through the darkness towards him. For her, he would fight the curse again. For her, he would find a way to end this cycle of pain and transformation. Long before the chaos erupted, Queen Mariam was bestowed with a mystical artifact by King Jabari, a necklace of ancient origin, said to have been crafted by the first queen of Ambuji for her beloved king during the early days of the kingdom. This necklace, adorned with a gem, was not merely decorative. It was imbued with powerful magic that allowed the wearer to feel the emotions and, during times of great need, see through the eyes of their bonded love. Jabari placed the necklace around Mariam's neck with reverent hands, his eyes locking with hers. "This necklace will connect us, no matter the distance," he explained. "Should you ever be in peril, or should the curse threaten to overwhelm me, this will bridge our spirits." Grasping the necklace, Mariam felt an immediate warmth spreading through her chest, a gentle echo of Jabari's own heartbeat. It was a comforting reminder of their shared destiny and the deep, abiding love that sustained them through all adversities. Back to the present, Queen Mariam, guided by the subtle glow of the royal necklace, confidently led her small entourage through the twisting paths. Ikon, his eyes constantly scanning for threats, walked closely behind her, helping Zola navigate the uneven terrain. The necklace's gentle warmth against Mariam's skin served as a constant reminder of Jabari's presence, a beacon of hope in the shadowy gloom. But as they moved deeper into the heart of the forest, a sudden sharp pang shot through Mariam's chest. It was more intense than anything the necklace had transmitted before, a raw surge of pain and fear that mirrored Jabari's own. Without warning, Mariam's steps faltered, and her eyes rolled back as she slipped into a deep trance. The necklace flared with a brilliant light, enveloping her in a visible aura that pulsed rhythmically, akin to the beating of a distressed heart. Ikon, quick to react, caught Mariam before she could fall to the forest floor. "She's in a trance," he shouted, his voice laced with concern. He carefully lifted her, signaling to Zola, who looked on with wide-eyed worry. "Under the oak, now," Ikon commanded, pointing to a massive oak tree with a thick canopy that offered both concealment and protection. They hurried to the tree, Ikon laying Mariam gently against its broad trunk. Zola, though concerned, began to gather leaves and small branches to create a more hidden spot under the tree, her hands working quickly to shield Mariam from any prying eyes or malevolent forces lurking in the forest. Slowly, a trance enveloped her, the forest's chilling sounds fading into a silence so profound she could hear her own heartbeat syncing with Jabari's. Visions began to flood her mind, not her own memories, but Jabarishi's fears, his pain, and his monstrous transformations. She saw through his eyes, the tightening of his muscles, the excruciating pain of bones realigning, and the raw, guttural roars that echoed through the dark woods. She felt his desperation, his struggle against the beast within, and his profound loneliness in the fight to maintain his humanity. Each vision was a thread, weaving a tapestry of their shared sorrow and love, binding her spirit closer to his. Through this mystical connection, Mariam whispered words of love and encouragement, hoping her voice would reach him across the spiritual link provided by the necklace. As the trance deepened, the gem began to pulse more vigorously, its light piercing the darkness of the trance. Guided by this light, Mariam's spirit journeyed through the forest, drawn irresistibly towards Jabari. The vision shifted, showing her glimpses of landmarks, twisted ancient trees, a silent, moonlit pond, and the ruins of an old stone altar, landmarks she could follow in the physical world. Back under the oak tree, as the first light of dawn began to pierce the night, Mariam's eyes fluttered open. Ekon and Zola exhaled in relief. "I felt his pain," she whispered hoarsely to her companions, who listened intently. "The curse. It's stronger than ever, but I know where he is now. I saw the path and the cave where he suffers." Ekon helped her to her feet, his respect for her evident in his gentle touch. "Then we will follow your lead, my queen. We will find King Jabari and end this curse together." With Mariam's guidance, drawn from her profound connection to Jabari and the visions shared through the trance, the group set forth with renewed purpose. The path she had seen in her vision was clear in her mind, and every step they took was a step closer to not just rescuing Jabari, but to confronting the very heart of the darkness that plagued their land. Deep within the heart of the evil forest, shrouded by ancient trees and veiled in perpetual mists, the witch watched from her hidden lair. Her eyes, ageless and sharp, gazed through a pool that mirrored the world beyond her domain. On its surface, she saw Queen Mariam and her companions making their way through the dense undergrowth, each step purposeful, each breath a testament to their resolve. The witch's lips curled into a smirk. Centuries had passed since she had made the fateful pact with King Jabari's forefather, a pact that had twisted the fate of the royal bloodline and intertwined it with her own. The curse was her creation, a masterstroke of dark magic that bound her life force with the royal family's misfortune. As long as the curse remained, she was granted visions of the future and an enduring life, untouched by time's decay. From her vantage point, the witch began to weave her spells, her fingers tracing sinister patterns in the air. "They seek to end the curse," she whispered to the shadows that danced at her command. "But they know not the depths of its roots, nor the heights of my resolve. As long as the curse flows through their veins, my power is absolute." Her eyes returned to the pool, watching as Mariam helped Zola over a fallen log, their solidarity a minor annoyance to her plans. With a flick of her wrist, she sent a ripple across the water, and far off in the forest, the ground beneath the travelers' feet stirred subtly. As Mariam and her companions continued their journey, the forest around them grew darker, the path more treacherous. Unseen by them, the witch's magic infused the woods with a malevolent presence. Vines twisted more tightly around ancient trees, thorns sharpened like daggers, and a deep fog began to roll in, obscuring their way. "This forest is not just a barrier," Ekon noted, his voice low. "It feels like a living entity, watching, waiting." Mariam clutched the necklace, feeling its warmth as a beacon against the growing chill. "We must be vigilant," she advised. "There are forces at work here trying to push us back." Back in her lair, the witch prepared for the confrontation she knew was inevitable. Her immortality was tied to the royal curse, and any threat to it was a threat to her existence. Yet she could not help but marvel at the queen's courage, a trait she had observed through the generations, always resurfacing no matter how deep the darkness seemed. "I will not be undone by mere bravery," the witch vowed. "Let them come. They will find the depths of my power are as unfathomable as the curse is unbreakable." With that, she cast another glance into the pool, her mind plotting, her magic weaving a web of protection around her dwelling. The witch was ready to defend her immortality, prepared to face anyone who dared challenge the curse that sustained her. As Mariam, Ekon, and Zola pressed forward, the forest seemed to close in around them, the air thick with the scent of decay and the unseen weight of watching eyes. Every step seemed to require more effort than the last, as if the very soil of the forest was reluctant to let them pass. The deeper they ventured, the more palpable the sense of danger became. Mariam's connection to the necklace intensified, its light pulsing in sync with her heart-beat steady, comforting rhythm in the midst of encroaching darkness. "We are close," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustling of leaves and the distant, ominous howls of creatures unknown. Ekon surveyed their surroundings with a wary eye, his hand never straying far from the hilt of his sword. Zola, though fatigued, kept her spirits bolstered by Mariam's unyielding determination, aiding the group with her knowledge of healing and protective charms. As Mariam, Ekon, and Zola navigated the denser parts of the evil forest, a faint cry for help pierced the eerie silence. Startled, they quickened their pace towards the source of the sound, coming upon a small, obscured cave, partially hidden by thick undergrowth. Inside, they found a young woman, seemingly in distress, her clothes tattered and her face streaked with dirt and fear. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with an aura of vulnerability that immediately drew Mariam's compassionate heart. "Please, help me," the woman cried as she spotted them, her voice trembling with desperation. Without hesitation, Mariam and her companions rushed to aid the woman, carefully helping her out of the cave. Once safe, she collapsed into Mariam's arms, sobbing. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching her torn garments around her. "What is your name?" Queen Mariam asked her. "My name is Lila," she replied. Mariam then offered her water, which Lila accepted with a nod of gratitude. As she drank, her eyes met Mariam's, and there was a depth of sorrow that tugged at the queen's heart. "How did you come to be here, Lila?" Mariam asked gently, sensing the weight of the story yet to be told. Lila set the water aside, gathering her thoughts. "My husband, Joran, was a craftsman in our village, a kind and gentle soul. Our life was humble but happy, filled with love. Then, our daughter Elia fell gravely ill. The healers could do nothing. They said only a rare herb found in this forest could save her." Her voice cracked, and she paused, taking another sip of water. "Joran, desperate to save our child, made a choice to venture into the woods and get the herb needed. Elia passed away already, and he wasn't even present at her burial." Lila continued, her eyes clouding with unshed tears. "With our daughter gone and my husband gone, grief became my sole companion. I had nothing left but echoes of their laughter in our empty home. One night, the silence was too much to bear," Lila said, her voice a whisper now. "I decided to find Joran, to bring him home or join him here. I thought perhaps we could grieve together, rebuild something from the remnants of our shattered lives. But this forest is no place for the weary or the heartbroken," Lila added, a shiver running through her. "I was attacked by what I can only describe as a werewolf. It chased me through the woods, its howls of constant terror at my back. In my panic, I found this cave and hid inside, but the creature, while trying to force its way in, blocked the entrance, trapping me." She looked up at Mariam, her eyes intense. "I thought I would die there, lost and alone. But then I heard your voices, and hope, such fragile, fleeting hope, returned." Mariam reached out, taking Lila's hand in her own. "Your story, it moves me deeply," Mariam confessed, her own heart aching with empathy for Lila's loss and suffering. "Like you, I am driven by love and a desperate wish to save my husband from a curse that torments him. I believe fate brought us together today, Lila." Lila nodded, squeezing Mariam's hand. "Perhaps it did, Your Majesty, and perhaps together we might find the strength to overcome the darkness that haunts us both." As they prepared to continue their journey, Mariam felt a kinship with Lila. Her story resonated deeply with her own struggles. Yet, Ekon and Zola exchanged wary glances, their instincts cautioning them against trusting too swiftly. The path forward was fraught with unknowns, and each step deeper into the forest brought them closer to hidden truths and imminent dangers, with Lila now among them, a new ally or a potential threat.